So we ended up leaving off about his grandparents, great grandparents, kind of starts talking about the mom. Also, on the last video, you ended up hearing a little baby screaming. Yes, that's my 1-year-old daughter. And today, hopefully, she's pretty much more entertained and you won't hear in the background. But she did something amazing today, which she ended up taking her first steps, which to me is it's just an amazing sight to see. And she wanted me to hold her, to be there as a safeguard for her to walk to. It was amazing. But anyways, let's go on with this reading. And I believe this section is going to be about the mom and it's going to end up transitioning to him himself. I can remember the pilots gathered around the kitchen table talking about the planes and telling stories. Sometimes they discuss strange things called full fighters or UFOs. When we were lucky, they got out the projector and showed Kodachrome slides. That was a special treat. By the time I was 8 years old, I think I had already seen and been inside every plane the Air Force had ever owned, which used to be the Army Air Force. I had flown in several. I had seen many of them crash and had friends who had lost their fathers. I remember one night in the Azores at Lajes Field, we were at the base theater watching a movie when the projector ground to a stop. The lights came on and a plea was made for blood donors. We knew there had been a disaster. Everyone went outside and looked down the hill at the flight line. It was literally consumed in flames. We can see men on fire running through the night. A B-29 had crashed. I forgot if it had been taken off or landing, but I will never forget the scene that was spread before me on that night. No one went back to the movie, even though we had only seen half. I was 9 years old, but felt much older. I had seen many crashes, and I would see many more in the years to come. But I never saw anything that could ever compare to the wreckage, the fire, the devastation, or the loss of life caused by the crash of that B-29. We left the Azores a year later. As we climbed into the sky, I looked out the plane window. I could still see pieces of the wreckage where it had been pushed away from the runways. It was that incident that gave me an appreciation of the danger that my dad faced on a daily basis. I knew then how lucky we were to see him walk in the door. Aviation wasn't safe in those days, especially for military pilots. We all knew families who had lost someone in a crash. I didn't always love my father. He was always a strict disciplinarian. My dad did not believe in spare the rod, and his belt was put to use frequently in our family. I was a very sensitive but willful child. Rules didn't mean much to me until I got caught breaking them. Many times I was the focus of his anger. Like most kids, I didn't understand. I thought he was a tyrant. Now I appreciate his upbringing. I know beyond the shadow of a doubt that without his strict discipline, we most probably would have turned out bad. Just want to reminisce a little bit. How many of us have gotten our ass whooped by our parents when we misbehave? But that is something funny when he's talking about that, because it does bring memories to youthful times when you know you were doing something wrong. You knew if you got caught, you were going to get your ass whooped. And sometimes your luck ran out. Let me go on. Now I love my dad. He is my friend. He is an independent, gregarious, feisty, tough, confident, adventurous, sometimes overbearing, handsome, big bear of a man. My mother told me that she fell in love with him because he looks like John Wayne, and he does. I have watched him progress from one who disdained any public show of affection to a man who is just as likely to hug you as shake your hand. On the other side, he has at times made me so angry that I could have punched him in the mouth, but I never have. It's damn hard for anyone not to like him. He is always up to some mischief, and I can guarantee you that no one is ever bored around my father. My mother is a real Southern lady. They used to call her kind a Southern belle. She is one of the last of the dying breed. Dovey Nell Woodside Cooper is the type of woman men like to dream about when they're lonely. She is the kindest, gentlest woman I have ever known. I do not make that statement just because she is my mother. It's true. She was beautiful as a young woman and she is beautiful now. My mother is one of those people who once she likes you can't be driven away. She is loyal to a fault. I have seen her during the good and during the bad times. She never flinched, no matter what. It always surprised me that she could be so tough and yet so kind, gentle and loving all at the same time. Woe to anyone who ever harms my dad or one of her children in her presence. She is the best cook who ever stepped foot in any kitchen that was ever built. I love my mother probably more than anyone else in this world. I have a brother Ronnie and a sister Connie. They are they are fraternal twins, 2 years younger than me. We were closer than most siblings when we were children because we spent so much of our lives in foreign countries where oftentimes we found ourselves unable to communicate except with each other. We had school friends, but school was often many miles from where we lived. We had few toys. Most of them were things mother gave us, such as spools, cigarette boxes, string, or anything else that we could find to keep us occupied. Every Christmas was a delight because we always got some real toys. Ronnie and I had a propensity to see how things work. However, so they never lasted long. Everything we wore, including shoes, was ordered from the Sears catalog. It was the wish book, and we never tried of looking through it. We alternately loved each other, hated each other, fought each other, and defended each other, as I guess all kids do. Who remembers those catalogs, those Sears catalogs, where you would window shop in a sense of what you wanted? My mom would usually kind of tell us, "Oh, well, what do you guys would like for Santa to bring you?" We had a catalog just like that, so it was pretty trippy when he's talking about that. And that was during his time, so I'm not as old as he is, but during the '80s, '90s, they still had those catalogs going around. But it's a trip when he's talking about it because I do reminisce about things like that. So let me move on with my reading. Ronnie, his wife Susie, and their daughter Jennifer live in Garber, Oklahoma, where Ron sells John Deere farm equipment. Ron and Susie built their house with their own hands. As far as I know, they tended to live in that house until they died. Ronnie served as an officer in the Army. In Vietnam, he earned the Silver Star. We haven't seen each other since 1976 when he came to visit me in the hospital after I lost my leg. Nevertheless, I love him and I miss him a lot. Neither one of us can afford to travel much unless it's business. But one of these days, soon, I'm going to surprise him with a visit. Connie has shown me pictures, and Ronnie looks just like my great grandfather. Almost every picture I've seen shows Ron in chaps, Stetson, boots, and either near or on a horse. I guess that is about how it should be, as Ronnie always wanted to be a cowboy when he was a child. Connie has really turned out to be a fine woman. When she was little, I sometimes liked her and sometimes didn't. Little boys didn't usually have much use for little girls, since we only had each other to play with. However, Ronnie and I loved her a lot. but little boys just can't ever admit anything like that. I remember Connie always followed me everywhere I went. I couldn't get rid of her no matter how hard I tried. Her devotion and loyalty made me love her all the more. Of course, I pretended that she was a pain in the ass. As we grew older and began to realize that there was a really big difference between boys and girls, Connie began to take on an air of mystery. From that time until I was about 18, she baffled me completely. I remember when she was around 13 or so, she would throw temper tantrums when she got angry. She would stomp her feet, scream, run to her room, and then slam the door. Ronnie and I thought it was a great show, but couldn't for the love nor money understand why she did it. When we asked mom, she would just shake her head and say, hormones. Connie grew up to be a beautiful woman and eventually married her high school sweetheart. Gus didn't. They had two beautiful children, Janice and Chrissy. Janice is very much like Connie, loving and loyal. Chrissy is different. She's a redhead who loves to party. I guess Chrissy represents a freedom of spirit more than anything else. Connie's marriage deteriorated and no one could figure out what was happening until Gus was diagnosed as having brain tumors. It was tragic. Everyone really loved Gus. As his diagnosis progressed and he began to do crazy things, people just drifted away. I have always nurtured a very special love for Chrissy. She never deserted her father. When no one else could stand to be around him, Chrissy chose to go and live with him so he wouldn't be lonely, she said. Even now, I get all choked up when I think of that little red-headed girl going to live with her sick father so he wouldn't be lonely. His behavior was such that no one else could stand to be around him. At least that is what I am told. It wasn't Gus's fault that he became ill, and I've always felt it just wasn't fair to Connie, the children, or Gus. I have since learned that life is seldom fair. That is very true. Life is seldom fair, and that's something we all have to understand. But only because things seem unfair, it doesn't mean it should stop you, or it doesn't mean it should completely ruin your day or your life. Connie eventually remained and moved to Austin, Texas, where she has established herself as a valuable employee of a large bank. Her husband is an executive for McGraw Hill. His name, coincidentally, is Ron. We all really like Ron McClure, especially Dad, who has formed a close friendship with him. My sister has really blossomed into a wonderful woman. She has become one of my dearest and closest friends. She has grown to be so much a part of me that even now I sometimes get a feeling to look behind me to see if that little girl is still there. I feel a great loss when I see that it's only Sugar Bear, my faithful dog, but then I love him too, so I can't complain. I graduated in 1961 from Yamato High School in Japan. That fall, I enlisted in the Air Force. I really wanted to go into the Navy, but I had already had a tendency towards car sickness and seasickness. I attended basic at Lackland Air Force Base, Texas, and technical school for aircraft and missile neutralics at Marillo Air Force Base. On accomplishing, I was ordered to the 495th Bomb Wing of Strategic Air Command and Shepherd Air Force Base, just outside Wichita Falls. The name was later changed to the 45th Bomb Wing. Don't ask me why. In just a short time, I had gone from a skinny kid who didn't know much about anything, even though I thought I did, to an airman who had a secret security clearance and worked on B-42 bombers, KC-135 refueling aircraft, and miniature missiles. I saw real atomic bombs. I worked around them on a daily basis. Because of that, I had to wear a dosimeter just in case I was exposed to radiation. In those days, we were the elite of the Air Force and we knew it. I received a letter of commendation for my work. In due time, I was awarded the National Defense Medal and Air Force Good Conduct Medal. Actually, I think everyone was awarded the National Defense Medal so that no one would be embarrassed standing in formation with nothing on their chest. It's pretty much a participation trophy that he's talking about here. It was during this time that I met a couple of sergeants who kind of adopted me. We went out to the club together and usually ended up chasing women and drinking a lot of beer. They told me several stories about being attached to a special unit that recovered crashed flying saucers. Sergeant Mees told me that he had been on one operation that transported a saucer so large that a special team went before them, lowering all telephone poles and fences. Another team followed and replaced them. They moved it only at night. It was kept parked and covered somewhere off the road during the day. Since we were always half tamed when these stories came out, I never believed them. Sergeants were known to tell some tall tales to younger guys like me. Starting to get to the good stuff now, slowly but surely, but it's cool to know his background. It's good to know his family, where he believes that his family came from, where they settled, a little bit of details about his great grandparents, great grandmother, to transitioning to his father and mother, where they came from, what were they like, and then going into his story and how he ended up getting into the Air Force. And now he's starting to talk about little things here and there that veteran Army people are just telling them what they have experienced, what they have seen. But right now he's just looking at it like it's just a tall tale. They're pulling on his leg of some sort. All right, so let's go on. On November 22, 1963, I was on duty as CQ, charge of quarters, for the Field Maintenance Squadron. Most of the men were out on the flight line working. The barracks orderlies had been assigned their task. The first sergeant was gone somewhere, and I was alone. I turned on the orderly room's TV to watch the live broadcast of the president's motorcade in Dallas. I was not prepared for what I saw. I stared in disbelief as the events unfurled in front of my eyes. I knew that something had happened, but what? I had seen and heard assassinations, but my mind was not accepting it. I kept staring at the set to discover what it was that had happened, when slowly the realization crept over me. A numbness spread up my arms and legs. I saw what had happened. The hair stood up on the back of my neck and chill went down my spine. President Kennedy had been shot right in front of my eyes. At this point, huge tears began to stream down my face. Waves of emotion rushed through my body. I felt that I had to do something, so I picked up the direct line to the command center. I choked back the tears. When the command duty officer answered, I told him that the president had just been shot in Dallas. There was a pause, and he asked me, "How do you know he has been shot?" I told him that I had watched it on television and then hung up the phone. I was numb all over. A few minutes later, the command duty officer called back and ordered a red alert at DEFCON 2. Defense Condition 2 meant war was imminent. The roar of jet engines could already be heard as the alert crews taxied their plane towards the runway. I was scared shitless as I ran from barrack to barracks, routing out the night shift and those who had the day off. We had been told that we had about 15 minutes to launch all of our planes before the first atomic bomb would hit us, and the event that the Russian launched an attack. So we'll just leave it there. It started picking up in the sense that he's now talking more about his experience in the military and him talking about how he witnessed the president John F. Kennedy being assassinated on national TV with his own eyes. He talked about his emotions, he talked about what he ended up doing, which called his command center, let him know how what he ended up seeing, and he ended up getting a response to start getting everybody ready. DEFCON 2, pretty much imminent war. And their belief at that moment was that they had 15 minutes before Russia launches an attack. That was at that time in fear when it came down to Russia. So guys, see you guys on the next one. Hope you guys like this one.